21st December 2023, Amroha District, Uttar Pradesh, India. A 14-year-old girl was brought to a local hospital by her mother in a state of respiratory arrest. She did not survive. The mother, Rani Verma, told the doctors that her daughter had hanged herself. But just a few hours later, the medical examiner confirmed she was strangled to death. There were no signs of hanging. There were no signs of suicide. And then, all the truths began to come out. An affair, a witness, a mother who killed her own daughter to cover up the clues. Behind the peaceful facade of a small residential area lies a bloody, cold, and cruel family tragedy. Hasanpur, a small town in the Amroha district of Uttar Pradesh, where daily life revolves around dusty roads, crowded grocery stores, and the echoing calls of the morning market. Here, amid the old tin-roofed houses and tangled electric wires, lives a family that looks no different from any other. The Verma family. The mother, Rani Verma, 34, is a quiet housewife who lives with her 2 children in a small house in the Kala Shahid neighborhood. Her husband, Sushil Verma, works in another town and comes home only occasionally. They have been separated for more than a year, but there are no official divorce papers. People in the neighborhood still call her Rani, a quiet woman who occasionally goes to the market and rarely smiles. Her 2 children are Khushbu, a 14-year-old girl who is studying in grade 9 at a secondary school near her home, and her younger brother, who is just starting primary school. Khushbu is a good student, gentle and polite, and is loved by her neighbors. Every afternoon, people still see her sitting on the porch with her notebooks, studying or cycling to take her younger brother to extra classes. The Verma family was not wealthy, but they had been considered stable. A small house, an old ceiling fan, a black smoke gas stove, that was all they had. Their life revolved around the mundane: vegetarian food, tests, and the occasional parent-teacher conference at school. But no one expected that from that small house a terrible tragedy had silently formed, and the one who started it was the person Khushbu trusted the most in the world. To the neighbors living around Kala Shahid, the life of the Verma family of 3 seemed normal, sometimes even too quiet. Every morning, Khushbu wakes up at 6 a.m. to get ready for school. She wears a neatly folded blue and white uniform, her hair tied in 2 ribbons, carries her bag, and whispers a few greetings to everyone. She is the kind of student teachers love: hard-working, quiet, never causing trouble. Rani, her mother, usually sees her child off at the gate, then goes back inside, does housework, and prepares lunch. No one knows what she does all day long, but from around October 2023, people often see a strange man coming to her house around noon or late afternoon. At first, everyone thought he was a relative or a friend, but then the visits increased in frequency. A neighbor began to notice the front door was pulled tighter, the voices became quieter, and Khushbu, who had been a smiley little girl, became quieter. The man was Anil Kumar, an old family friend who lived in the area. He had worked with Rani on a community education program a few years ago. They lost contact, then suddenly reappeared. Khushbu, coming home early after school, witnessed what a 14-year-old should never see: her mother and Anil in an undeniable pose. From that day on, she began to avoid her mother, spoke less, and appeared fearful. She wrote more in her diary, sat alone for hours on the porch without reading. Many adults saw this, thinking that she was just going through puberty or that she was stressed out with schoolwork. Only Khushbu knew clearly what was happening in that house was no longer family. Rani was different. She felt distinctly uncomfortable with her daughter's eyes, her vague questions and suspicious looks. She began to lose patience. Her voice became colder. The arguments between mother and daughter became more frequent, even though they were always kept within the 4 walls. Anil, according to the locals, continued to come and go despite Khushbu's repeated protests. And then, in the cornered mother's mind, the worst thought began to form. If he continues to protest, if he tells anyone, then it will all be over. The end-of-year holidays were just 3 days away. The school had announced an early dismissal for the festival, but Khushbu had been attending regularly. She avoided looking at her mother while eating, spoke little to her younger brother, and wrote frequently in a small pink notebook with a lock. That same day, Anil Kumar showed up at Rani's house at noon. A neighbor said she saw Khushbu returning from the gate, accidentally catching sight of her mother standing at the door with Anil, holding hands. The encounter lasted only a few seconds, but the look in the child's eyes and the glance in the mother's eyes, enough to understand that the silence had ended. Khushbu skipped school. She stayed home all day, skipped lunch, drank water, and wrote in her notebook. Rani asked her a few questions, but when her daughter did not answer, she angrily went into her room and closed the door. In the evening, a neighbor heard a loud argument. The content was unclear, but Khushbu's voice was crying and saying, "I will tell you everything. I can't take it anymore." Just one sentence, enough to break every last boundary in Rani Verma's mind. Rani began to clean the house. She bought some food and called a friend to get some sedatives. When the friend asked why, she smiled and said, "I can't sleep. The baby hasn't been stable lately." In the evening, she cleaned Khushbu's room. She read a few lines from the diary, which was left ajar. "You are no longer my mother. You are a stranger. You are what I fear most." That night, Rani stayed awake almost all night. Rani made tea early and made breakfast as usual. Khushbu said nothing. She ate half a bowl of rice and went into her room to read a book. Little did she know that this would be the last morning she would see the sunlight. That same morning, Anil called Rani and said, "I think we should stop." She obviously knows. But Rani did not answer. In her mind, everything had been decided the night before. In the small room behind the kitchen, Khushbu sat on a mat reviewing her lessons. The window was open and sunlight streamed in and fell on the pages of her book. She did not know that her mother was standing in the kitchen, her hand tightening on a soft string of fabric rolled from an old sari. Rani entered the room. She gently closed the door behind her. Her voice was gentle. "Khushbu, come here so I can talk to you." Khushbu did not turn around. She just let out a soft sigh, put down her pen, and slowly turned around. "Mom, stop pretending. I know everything. I'll tell Dad." In that moment, in Rani's mind, there was chaos. She could no longer hear the sounds outside. She could no longer think logically. All was panic, fear, and twisted self-preservation. She rushed forward, her arms around her daughter's neck. Khushbu struggled, screamed, but no one heard. The house was locked. The room was locked. For a minute, just a minute, all the noise stopped. Khushbu fell to the cement floor, her eyes wide open, her lips blue. There were rope marks on her neck. Her small body was motionless. Rani stood there, gasping for breath. Her hands were shaking. Her mind was blank. She did not cry. Instead, she began cleaning up. She wiped the blood from her nose, changed her daughter's clothes, and pulled the sheet over the body. She untied the string, hid it in a plastic bag, and threw it in the trash can behind the house. She turned the wall clock back an hour to mess up the estimated time of death. Then she called out to the neighbors. "The girl. She hanged herself. I found out too late." A woman ran by, saw Khushbu's body, and burst into tears. But it was she, a few hours later, who was the first to call the police because something was wrong. Rani sat silently on the bed, her eyes dry, her hands still shaking. She did not know. Traces of crime never disappear. Even a glance, a faint bruise, can reveal a conspiracy. At around 11:15 a.m. on December 21, 2023, Rani Verma appeared at the Hassanpur health station, carrying her daughter's lifeless body. She shouted to the doctor on duty, "My daughter, she hanged herself. I found her too late. Please save her." The medical staff immediately took the body to the emergency room and performed basic first aid. But less than 10 minutes later, the doctor in charge came out and shook his head. The girl died before she was brought here. There were no signs of breathing or heartbeat. The time of death could have been several hours ago. Meanwhile, a nurse, Gao, who was a neighbor of the family, whispered to the doctor, "I have my doubts. She is a good and polite student. She even greeted me yesterday. She cannot have committed suicide. Something is wrong." The news spread quickly through the neighborhood. Within an hour, several residents began arriving at the hospital. Some said they had heard an argument the night before. Others reported seeing Anil Kumar frequently. At 12:30 p.m., Hassanpur police received a call from the hospital. A 14-year-old girl was brought in dead. There are suspicious signs. Please send someone to verify. Immediately, a task force was dispatched. The police recorded Rani's initial statement. She said her daughter was mildly depressed and had mentioned death. But when asked for more details about the scene, she was confused. I just remember seeing her lying motionless and hanging by a rope, something like a scarf." The officer looked straight into Rani's eyes. He saw panic, but not panic over losing a child, but the uncertainty of someone who had something to hide. The police ordered the house to be sealed while the scene was investigated. Khushbu's body was sent to the District Forensic Center for an autopsy. That same afternoon, the initial announcement from the medical examiner made the case officially enter the criminal stage. There were no proper hanging marks. The strangulation marks were clear, symmetrical, consistent with strangulation by hand or with a soft object, not suicide. Rani, the seemingly heartbroken mother, now officially became the first suspect. On the afternoon of December 21st, a crime scene investigation team along with police investigators arrived at the Verma family home in Kala Shahid. The room where Khushbu died was completely sealed off. There was no sign of a struggle, no broken objects, no overturned chair, the usual sight in hangings. The only thing that stood out was a slightly disheveled bedsheet and a faint purple stain on the tile floor, where Khushbu had been lying. The police searched the entire house. In the trash can behind the house, they found a plastic bag containing a brown string cut from an old sari. The string showed signs of unusual stretch, and a short piece of hair was entangled in the string. The evidence was immediately sealed and sent to the laboratory. Cause of death: strangulation by soft object. Flexible object that does not cause skin breakage, possibly cloth. Time of death: between 9:30 and 10 a.m., at least 1 hour before Rani took the body to the hospital. No signs of suicide, no hanging marks from the rope around the neck from top to bottom, no skin damage around the neck typical of hanging, no poison in the stomach, no internal injuries. Signs of a struggle: a few small scratches on the back of the victim's left hand, possibly from an attempt to defend himself when attacked. In addition, the police seized a notebook from Khushbu's room containing a short note. "I don't know why Mom is like this. I just want peace in the family. I will tell Dad everything." This was written in blue ballpoint pen the night before her death. All the evidence, physical and psychological, pointed in one direction. Rani Verma was not telling the truth. Immediately after the autopsy report was sent to Hassanpur police station, the case was immediately changed from suspected suicide to suspected murder. The police expanded the investigation in 3 main directions. 1. Motive for murder: family conflict. 2nd, Rani's relationship with a man named Anil Kumar. 3rd, possibility of an accomplice or instigator. On December 22nd, 2023, The police summoned Rani Verma for the first time to take an official statement. Initially, she maintained her statement. Her daughter had hanged herself. She discovered it late, panicked, and did not handle it in time. However, investigators began to come up with conflicting details. Why were there no hanging marks but symmetrical strangulation marks? Why were there no fallen chairs, no strangulation rope hanging from a crossbar? Why was the body changed into clean clothes before being taken to the hospital? And why was the strangulation rope hidden in a trash can behind the house? Rani began to lose her composure. She lowered her head and repeated only one sentence. I don't know. I'm so scared. On 23rd December, Anil Kumar was summoned by the police. He denied any involvement in the incident. However, when questioned about his relationship with Rani, Anil admitted, "We knew each other, and yes, I did go to her house, but I had no idea what happened to the child." Anil's phone was examined. Text messages between him and Rani showed that on the evening of the 20th of December, they had a heated argument. A text message from Rani at 10:47 p.m. read, "She knows. I will take care of it. Don't worry." That text to the police was circumstantial evidence of a deliberate decision. On December 24th, neighbors were called in to give statements. At least 5 confirmed hearing the mother and daughter arguing the night before Khushbu died. Another neighbor claimed to have seen Rani pull the gate and lock the house early in the morning, something that had never happened before. As the streets of Hasanpur were bustling with Christmas celebrations at the local police station, an urgent arrest warrant was signed by Inspector General Ankit Yadav, the person in charge of the case. At 2:15 p.m., the police raided Rani Verma's house. She was at home with her young son, folding clothes. When she saw the police, she turned pale, didn't ask why, didn't react, didn't shed a single tear. Her little boy cried. The neighbors were in an uproar, but Rani kept her eyes blank. She was taken to the police station within 30 minutes. By then, all the local news stations had started reporting. Mother arrested on suspicion of killing 14-year-old daughter to cover up affair. Meanwhile, the police continued to take additional statements from Anil Kumar. However, lacking direct evidence of his presence at the scene, and the text messages, although speculative, were not enough to incriminate him, so he was released after 48 hours of detention. On 26 December, Rani was produced before the Hasanpur court. The judge approved her 14-day remand pending investigation. When asked if she had anything to say, she simply replied, "I have nothing to lose." The media crowded outside the court. The public was shocked. A mother, afraid of being exposed for her adultery, had chosen to kill her own daughter. No one could understand the psychology behind such a decision. Rani was formally detained at Amroha district jail, where she would face the longest day of her life, not with her daughter, but with her own conscience. In a small interrogation room with faded blue walls, Rani Verma sat with her head bowed. In front of her was Senior Inspector Siddharth Tiwari, who had been working on the case from day one. The interrogation was fully recorded. No pressure, no torture. Just a series of repeated questions, slow, but penetrating like a dull knife. "Inspector, why didn't you call the neighbors when you found your daughter hanging?" Rani, I panicked. "Inspector, why wasn't there any sign of hanging from the ceiling?" Rani, I don't know. Maybe she didn't hang, but hanged herself. "Inspector, do you remember what you wrote to Anil Kumar the night before?" Rani, silent for a while. "I just didn't want him to ruin my life." "Inspector, you see your daughter as a threat?" Rani, staring. "No, but she hates me. She wants to tell her father I don't know what to do." The inspector opens the small notebook, flips to Khushbu's last note, places it in front of Rani. She reads, her eyes red, but she still doesn't cry. Inspector. Read it. She doesn't hate you. She just wants her family to be the way it was. A long silence. Finally, Rani says, I didn't mean to kill her. I just wanted her to be quiet for a while. I didn't know she would stop breathing. It was not a clear confession. But in the eyes of the law, those words, when placed alongside forensic evidence, the crime scene, and witness testimony, were enough to form a serious indictment. After nearly a month of careful investigation, the Amroha District Police formally filed a charge sheet against Rani Verma on January 18, 2024. The 199-page charge sheet includes a detailed crime scene report, an independent forensic autopsy report, analysis of physical evidence, cloth thread, hair samples and fingerprints, extracts of text messages between Rani and Anil Kumar, statements of 5 neighbor witnesses, statements of the accused during formal interrogations, diary and handwritten letters of the victim Khushbu. We have a very strong and coherent chain of evidence, the prosecutor said. This case is not based on conjecture, but on a clear legal foundation. A child was deprived of his life by his own mother. Anil Kumar, although suspected of being indirectly involved, was not prosecuted because he was not present at the scene, had no DNA evidence or direct connection to the murder. However, he was listed as a witness and was responsible for answering questions in court during the trial. On February 2, 2024, the case was transferred to the Hasanpur Criminal Court of First Instance. The case was classified as murder of a minor in particularly serious circumstances. The maximum penalty is death, although in many cases the court still favors life imprisonment if the defendant has mitigating circumstances. Over the next year, the case went through 67 trials. Each trial lasted from 2 to 4 hours with a total of 8 key witnesses called, including the victim's father, Khushbu's younger brother, 2 neighbors, the forensic doctor, the chief investigator, and Anil Kumar. Morning of July 28, 2025. Hasanpur Criminal Court of First Instance. The courtroom was packed. Outside the gate, dozens of reporters, citizens, and child rights organizations gathered. The atmosphere was tense. Rani Verma was brought in by a special vehicle. She was wearing a simple sari, her hands were not handcuffed, her head was slightly bowed. Her face was expressionless, she did not resist, she did not say a word. Chief Justice Mohan Tripathi read out the verdict in an atmosphere of absolute solemnity. After considering all the physical evidence, witness statements, forensic conclusions, and the defendant's indirect confession, the trial panel concludes, the accused Rani Verma intentionally strangled her daughter, the victim Khushbu Verma, 14 years old, to death, in order to conceal her extramarital relationship, avoiding detection and prosecution. This act constitutes murder under Section 302 of the Indian Penal Code. There is no reasonable mitigating circumstance. The court sentenced life without parole. In the courtroom, the victim's father, Sushil Verma, burst into tears. He sat silently throughout the 67 hearings, never once speaking. Now that justice has been served, he only said one sentence. I never thought her mother would be the one to take her life. The verdict is considered one of the most serious domestic violence cases in Uttar Pradesh in recent years, sparking a powerful debate about parental psychology, moral decay, and the silent traumas in modern Indian families. Khushbu Verma's death was more than just the loss of a life. It was the destruction of a home, a tragic testament to a family that had seemed intact. A child, just 14 years old, with dreams, education, friends, and even fear, was stripped of her right to live by her own mother. No murderer could be colder than that. In modern society, when the pace of life is increasingly fast, Small cracks in the family, if not listened to, shared, and healed, can become deep holes leading to irreparable crimes. Love and understand children. Listen to even the smallest signals, because a timely word can save a life. Don't forget to subscribe and share so you don't miss the next cases.